You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, an Indiana-based public relations enterprise, and federally certified veteran-owned small business. I'm your host, Robert Bain, along with our producer, Chris Spangle. Our podcast is featured on the All Indiana Podcast Network in partnership with Wish TV. You may find Leaders and Legends at allindianapodcastnetwork.com. Thinking of starting a podcast or need to host a public meeting? Let Leaders and Legends LLC be your partner as you look for new ways to communicate your message. Please contact us at chris@leadersandlegends.net. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister. Our guest is a man whose impact is only getting more consequential as we swim in this ocean of political dystopia. Maybe that's the right word. I'm not sure. Senator Joe Manchin is our guest today. We're very, very proud and happy to have him. He is a very successful public official. He's also a very successful purveyor of common sense. And we're going to talk about his book, Dead Center: In Defense of Common Sense. Senator Manchin, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
We are big fans of subtitles on our podcast. We ask all our authors, why did they choose a particular subtitle? Yours subtitle is In Defense of Common Sense. How would you define common sense, and why does it need defending?
First of all, why do we call it common sense? Because most of us live our life by that. Just making sensible solutions or evaluations, realizations, things of that sort. But anymore, that common sense can be derailed by all the talking heads that are basically continuing, taking one side or the other, thinking they're right, we're wrong. And I keep saying, we don't live our lives like that. I don't know anybody that can say, forget about all the money you've borrowed, all the debt you have. Go ahead and just buy what you want. Go ahead and do what you want. You should be able to do that. But in the real life, that doesn't happen. So why can government operate in a different aspect of that? Not realization that we have to live within our balances and our budgets and what we can afford. So I've always said if people want to describe me as my politics has been fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. Now, in the book, I know you've gone through that and seen that and heard it, but really, I think we all are who we are by where we were raised, how we were raised, and who raised us. And I was raised with very loving, compassionate people. I said I was the luckiest child. I was a privileged child. I was raised as a privileged child. People say, well, you must have had a big house. Well, we lived in a 3-room apartment. Must be a fancy neighborhood between the railroad tracks and the creek. Why were you privileged? I had unconditional love. I had people that basically, no matter what I did, right, wrong, or different, they loved me. They would correct me, put me on a straight and narrow path, but they loved me. They never forsake me. So I was always held accountable and responsible for my actions and my words. Always. And I had parents and grandparents that were so generous helping people. They thought everybody needed a roof over their head, if they clothes on their back and food in their belt. And my grandmother made sure that she provided that. If somebody was homeless back then, this is in the early 50s. I remember as a very young child, and there was no social services. I remember the first commodity lines I've ever seen in my little town of Farmington, little coal mining town. I never remember anybody loafing on the street. I never saw anybody that didn't work. But I saw when people hit hard times, they would be standing in line once a month for the commodities that came in to the little town hall, and they would have their backs turned to this highway so you couldn't see them. They were so proud. So I've seen all of that. And my grandmother helped everybody. She had rules, though. So I'm giving you this quick background because everything I've made in my political decisions, my political life, has been based off of how I was raised, what I saw, and what I thought really was the humankind that we should all have for each other. But my grandmother, you come to her house, she says, okay, she made us whitewash her basement. We kept her basement clean, spectacular. And she had a shower and she had a bed and she would feed them and all that. And she said, they come and said, Mom, okay, can I stay with you? And she said, sure, honey, if you need a place. But I got 3 rules. You can't drink, you can't cuss, and you got to work. I got 20 little grandbabies running around here, and they're not going to see anybody of bad character. I want them to see good people that know how to work, have a skill set, and perform. So that was fine. That's all we ever saw. And then we'd find out, where did Deloitte go? Where's Wilbar Willie? Where's Peg Leg Peggy? We had names.
Yeah, Peg Leg Peggy. That's Peggy. That's my favorite one.
Peg Leg Peggy. He actually had a wooden peg leg. Yeah, I caught in the rubber. One time we had to pull it out. And anyway, and Mama Kay had such a loving way of saying, well, honey, they're on the toot. She would go like this. That's the toot. When they're on the toot, that's the bottle. And she said, but they'll be back in 6 weeks. She had to circle down. She knew the flaws of character in life, but when they were there, they were good models and they were good characters. And that's what she wanted. So everything, and we'll go into more in detail on public policy and all that. But I would always reach back to that. And I always told everybody, even Schumer and Mitch McConnell, and even the president, whether it be Biden or Obama or any of them, if I can't explain it, if I couldn't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it. You can't put enough pressure on me to make me vote for something I can't explain to the people I love and respect the most. Okay. And I could not, that's how I was raised. So if I couldn't explain it, I'll make mistakes sometimes and I can fix them. And I was told as a young child, don't be afraid of doing something if you think it's right. If it's a mistake, you can fix it. Just don't make a mistake intentionally.
We want to be fair and judicious on the podcast, and we're lucky enough to have had a lot of Democrats on, Leon Panetta, Evan Bayh, Joe Donnelly, and a lot of Republicans. I've spent my life in Republican politics the last 30 years or so. All the things you've just mentioned, they are present in each party. They're present in the people who are in each party, elected officials or just folks. Why doesn't it seem to work? Congress, the political system, when they have...
Your day moves fast. Your news should too. That's why there's a new and improved Wish TV app, bringing you more local news, breaking alerts, live streaming, weather forecasts, radar, and Indiana sports, all in one place. Customize your news feed to see the stories that matter most to you and get the information you need when you need it. Download the new and improved Wish TV app today on iOS or Android and take News 8 with you everywhere.
Have these things, and it just seems that they get tossed aside. You mentioned that quite a bit in your book.
I think human nature is this, but basically with human nature, you hit some hard spots, you hit some rough times. And when you do it, if you can't evaluate that maybe you created that bad situation or hard time with bad decisions or bad actions, you want to blame it on somebody. And then the social media got bigger, and you could basically, I always said this, you're entitled to your own opinion. You're just not entitled to create your own facts to support your stupid opinion. Okay? Today, they can find someone, no matter how stupid your opinion may be, or what's your thoughts, that'll concur with you. So I told you it was right. So we're out of the realm of reality to where you have to be held accountable for that, because you can find people that can support or give you justification for what you're believing and thinking. So it's gotten further and further apart. But I don't know what to tell you. I said just the character flaws that we have as humans are real. The ability to realize that we have flaws is what's challenging.
It's August 5th when we're recording this podcast. We usually don't date our podcasts because we hold them for a while sometimes. But
today is my wife's 59th anniversary, August the 5th.
Where would you be without Mrs. Manchin?
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I know that about my life and everything, because she was such an intricate part of everything that I've ever done or any success I've ever had.
That comes through in your book. A lot of times I notice in your book when you feel like or are writing about a particular challenge, like how am I going to vote or what am I going to do? I've got to go to the scene of this tragedy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Gail magically appears, but Miss Manchin always seems to be in those passages. Like you lean on her in those times.
Well, she doesn't say a whole lot about when she knows I'm going through trying to make a decision. When she does speak up, she'll speak up and say, I think you need to think this through. This might not be what you think. And then when she knows that when I reach out and say, okay, how do you give me the background on what you think this is, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing and deciphering through to make a decision. And she's just spot on. She's solid. God, she's solid.
Well, happy anniversary to
Thank
both
you.
of you. Thank you for taking an hour on your anniversary day to.
Well, we're good. We're going to dinner at 6 tonight, so we're in good shape.
We'll be done by then, I promise.
Yeah.
One of the other things that comes through in your book is how political, and that's small p, but also maybe big P, your family is. Multiple elected officials,
Yeah.
mayors, secretary of state. You've mentioned in your book, and then right before we started to hit record, the 1960 West Virginia Democratic primary, which was a tremendously important primary for the Kennedy campaign, like make or break almost. I remember they shipped in Franklin Roosevelt Jr. to come.
They had them all. They had
yeah.
everybody. Rosie Greer, big Sam Huff, from our hometown of Farmington. They had them all.
I didn't know that the violent world of Sam Huff was from your town until I read your book. Have you ever watched that TV? Or I'm sure you've watched it 100 times.
Watched when they filmed it. Came to the Farmington and filmed it. Sam worked for my father in the furniture store and my grandfather in the grocery store when he was in high school. So he got married. He got married when he was 17 years old, still working and helping. And I was like, he's like my big brother. I used to go with him all the time on deliveries and things. I was 10 years younger, but I'd go on him wherever he would go. I'd be on the truck with him and ride and this and that. But he was a character now. But oh yeah.
For those who aren't necessarily familiar with Sam Huff, he was a Hall of Fame linebacker, mostly for the Giants. Didn't he play for the Redskins, I think?
He ended his career with the Redskins, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Was born in West Virginia. I want to mention a couple other people just real quick. This fella named Nick Saban. I'm a huge Nick Saban fan, even though I don't root for Alabama or didn't. I root for Notre Dame.
We call him brother. Affectionately, we call him brother. I never knew his name was Nick until he was 20 years old.
Bobby Bowden was a coach on a football team when you were on briefly at West Virginia.
He was my quarterback coach at WVU in 1966 when he came there. I was a freshman going into my sophomore year. I got a scholarship at WVU, and I was playing quarterback, and I was the coach Jim Corum, and his staff was fired after my freshman year. Freshmen couldn't play varsity ball back in 60. So then when sophomore year, I was really hoping I get to play some ball and everything. And they brought in Jim Carvin as the new head football coach, and Bobby Bowden was the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator. And he came in, and I couldn't understand him. He had that southern drawl. I didn't know. I swear to God, he'd get in the huddle and practice. And then he'd come up, and then every then I hear, "That's a bungy, that's a bungy, that's a bungy." I'm thinking, "Dance with the bungy." What does that mean, coach? He said, "Joe, stay with the play that's working until they stop it, and we'll try something different." I said,
Did you manage? Nick Saban, I know, wrote the foreword to your book. I enjoyed it very much. Did you stay in contact with Coach Bowden?
I stayed in contact all my whole life with Coach Bowden until he passed away. Every campaign he calls, Joe, what can I do to help? Then later when I became governor, he came and stayed with me for a little bit and did a couple speaking engagements and this and that. And his wife Ann, just the most wonderful, delightful people I think you could ever want to meet. Sincerely, truly. He didn't have a political bone in his body. And I'll never forget when George Wallace was running for president, Jim Carlin convinced him that he should take the lead, that Bobby Bowden should take the lead to support George Wallace in West Virginia. He had no idea, okay? So I said, "Coach," I went and talked to him one time. I said, "Coach, my family's a little bit political. They kind of follow this stuff. And I just want you to know, I think that, and they think that this is wrong for you to be involved or make it look." He said, "Joe, I didn't want to be involved. I'm not involved at all." He says, "Jim Carlin just said I needed to do that. He's the head coach." And I says, "Why didn't he do it? Why didn't he put his name out there? Why do you want you to put your name out there?" So he got off of that and everything. But so he was just such a wonderful human being.
You're listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our very special guest, former United States Senator, former governor of West Virginia, Joe Manchin. We're discussing his book, dead center in defense of common sense. What was your first political memory?
I think the 1960 election. John, I would have been 1960. I was 12, and I was 13 August 1960. So the primary was in May, and all of a sudden, let's say in 1959, my parents got really excited about this young senator going to run for president. Well, we're a Catholic family. I never thought anything, I mean, a little Catholic family and a little coal mining community, and it had a lot of immigration in those areas. So my grandparents, both of my grandparents on both sides, my mom and dad's side. My dad's side came from San Giovanni Fiore, which is Calabria in Italy. That's where they came from. And my mother's side grandparents came from Ostrava, Czechoslovakia. So they were all Eastern European, coming from this for a better life. And they both ended up in coal mining communities. And they both had little grocery stores. They were entrepreneurs. And then here we are in a state, the least diverse state in the nation. Fewer Catholics than any other state, fewer diversification than any other state, white, Anglo-Saxon. Okay, so I never thought much about that. But as I got older, I wondered why they wouldn't allow Italians in the country club, or Jews, or blacks. So I guess we were in that category. But anyway, I never thought of any of that. I just kept living my life and doing what I did. All of a sudden, I'm 12 years old, and I see my parents get excited about this young Irish Catholic running for president. And I said, this must be something, because my parents, I've never seen them get that excited about politics. And I'll never forget, I was working on my go-kart in the garage. We had a little 3-room garage apartment. And my mother said, Joe, I want you to go upstairs. I want you to meet some people. And I said, hey, Mom, I'm all dirty. I've been working on a go-kart and kind of greasy. She said, I think it might be historical, Joe. You ought to come up. So I walked up there, and she was feeding Teddy Kennedy and a bunch of the Kennedy clans spaghetti, and they were all sitting there. And they all were very kind to me and nice. And, hey, young guy, how you doing? How's school? And on and on and on. Very good conversation. So I got interested and was following it while they were so excited. One night, we're watching television. We had wee little 10-inch black and white. And it must have been Walter Cronkite said, it's been said that if John Kennedy becomes president, that the Pope's going to run the country.
Yeah.
I looked at my mom. I didn't know what he meant by that. And I said, boy, Mom, he doesn't know the Catholics we know, because you can't tell them anything. They're not going to follow anybody. So I said, that's just so wrong why they interjected that because he was Catholic, that may be why you shouldn't vote for it. And that just went through me kind of differently. So that's my first, why would people be saying that? Or why would they do that?
For the Manchins, much like the Kennedys, politics was a family business, but also a family pitch-in. And they all helped.
What I remember from day one, my grandparents on both sides were so thankful to have an opportunity for a life in America that they always said, you got to get involved. You've got to help others. You got to be thankful for what we have and the ability that we have to help others. And so anytime they would feed people when there's nothing going on, they would loan money to people if they had it. My grandfather would always never kept any books. He just kind of worked out of his pocket.
Sure.
Everybody comes say, Papa, can I borrow 5? Can I borrow 5? And I'd be back in the store with him working. He said, sure, honey. He called everybody honey. Didn't matter black, white, green. Didn't matter what color you were, who you were, whatever. Called you the same, gave you the same opportunity. He says, here's a broom and a shovel. We'll clean up the parking lot. Come back, I'll give you the 5. And they said, Papa, we'll be right back. Thanks, Papa. I'll be right back. He looked at me and he said, don't worry, Johnny, about half of them take me up on. He knew human nature. He knew it. So all I ever saw was you had to work to receive something. And now if you couldn't work, my God, if we saw a child back then, polio or any type of
big.
Or mental illness, my grandmother would make us, I would walk on the street with her, she'd stop right there, make the sign of the cross, and she'd say a prayer to the Lord because of She looked at me, she said, Joe, by the grace of God, that could be you or me. And we have to make sure we help them. So I saw the compassion to help people who couldn't help themselves. But I saw the determination to make people that could do something, to give them respect and dignity in life. And I carried that with me all along. And I got chastised by the Democratic Party later in life when I'm in Washington as a senator, why I wasn't more compassionate. I said, compassionate? I'm compassionate as more so than anybody else. But I can tell you one thing. My father would say, Joe, if someone gives you something, you're very, very appreciative. Very appreciative, he says. But what will happen if you become dependent on those handouts, then you're going to be becoming not only compassionate, you become anticipating the next handout. And then you become very angry when the third one doesn't come. He says, because you become so dependent on somebody else than yourself. You can never let yourself get in that situation. So that's why I looked at everything.
Written a lot of speeches for political people, candidates, and office holders. Mike Pence and Luke Messer and some other names that you probably know through your time. I wrote this one speech, and the point of the speech was the swamp. They always talk about the swamp in D.C., and you're as acquainted with it as anyone. And the line I wrote in the speech was, the tax code is the swamp.
Almost
Reform the tax code, you've drained the swamp. Is that something that you have talked about quite a bit? The tax code and what to do with it and how it basically creates, I'm not going to say winners and losers, but certainly the influence that comes with being able to manipulate the tax code is part of what keeps the swamp alive.
Most certainly. Well, the amount of money in politics today is just unthinkable. And it'll be the downfall. Two things. Basically, that much influence by by small percentage of people. The last 2024 election, I'm thinking about $24 billion was spent in the presidential election. Almost 20%, $4.7 billion came from the billionaire class. That's with a B, not the M, not the millionaire, the billionaire class, which is a very a small percentage of people in America. They had that much influence because they put that much money in. That's wrong. The amount of money, Citizens United, opening up the floodgates, the Supreme Court making rulings that they have to know in their heart of hearts it's going to be detrimental to society as we know and the democracy that we know. With that being said, you figure, okay, how do you change it? You change it by how you elect your people, the character and quality of the human being that you want to represent you. And this experiment of ours represent a form of government. But when you close the primaries down, when you only have 3 states that have open primaries, you got 47% of the people identifying themselves the way I do, no party affiliation. Someone said, Joe, why did you leave the Democratic Party? Why are you an independent? I said, I'm an independent because I like both sides. And I can work with both sides, and I want to listen to both sides, and I want to be constructive with both sides. You can't do that in today's atmosphere because it's been weaponized. You got to pick a side, and the other side is the enemy. So even though you might think I'm an independent and moderate, if I still have a D or an R by my name, in my back, I said, you're talking a good game, but you're really still an R Republican, or you're really still a Democrat. So you're not really going to be listening or trying to help me as a pure independent. So we're trying to do that.
A few minutes ago, I mentioned August 5th, the date we're doing this podcast, for 2 particular reasons, because there have been two strong pieces of news. One of them you made with your daughter, Heather, and I'd love to have her on the podcast, just FYI.
She'd love to do it too. She's a real mover shaker.
And when you were on, I believe, Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, talking about independence and third parties and American governance and society. And then last night, Tuesday, August 4th, there were some elections in which the new, I don't know if it's fair to call it the new wing of the Democratic Party, but a offshoot of perhaps the Democratic Party, the Social Democrats or Democratic Socialists, won some very key primaries and races. So since that's really in the news, please talk for just a couple of minutes about why it's important to have independent thought as both parties are being pulled away from the center, which is clearly happening and has been happening.
Well, let me tell you how I approached the whole political process. I wasn't left and I wasn't right. I could work with center left and center right all day long. But I never ever did not want to hear from the extreme left and extreme right. So I'll give you an example. The extreme left might be going so much further than I would ever consider would be normal in political and constructive life. And it always made me, did I leave somebody behind? Did I forget something? Is someone hurting that I don't know about? So I would always, my conscience is there. On the right, far right, well, we can't do this and can't do that. Am I now making people invest in something because of my political preference versus what they shouldn't be having to use their tax dollars for? So I kind of balance them. Is this person telling me something that, hey, Joe, what are you doing there? We're going to be paying things and giving things away. We're not going to be able to stop. You're going to give social benefits to people that basically should have a hand up, not a continuous handout. Okay, so that was the guardrails I lived with. I put those on me. So now what you're seeing, the political parties have taken so much power and have so much power. They control the Democrat and Republican Party. Let's go back to the founding of this great experiment we're going to try by the founding fathers. There's not a word about a political party ever spoken in the Constitution or any of the drafts of anything we ever saw writing about.
They feared them.
Hold on. The first time we ever heard the political party being mentioned that I could find in history was 1796 is when George Washington's farewell speech. Why did he must have been so concerned that he had that. Beware of the political parties. The parties can become the engines that allow unscrupulous men to usurp the power from the people. Can you imagine? That's the first time we ever heard the word party being mentioned. And it was of caution. Now, guess what? That the Constitution's of the people, by the people, and for the people is the reason they did the Constitution, because we were all in this collectively. Now it's of the party, by the party, and for the party. Our political system evolves around parties, not people. So what they're ringing a bell, the DSA, let's give it back to the people. So that sounds very attractive until you start looking at what all they want to do, dismembering everything that we've ever believed. I want to live in a neighborhood that's safe, that my kids and grandkids can grow up in. I want an education system that works. I want borders that are safe and secure. But I also want an immigration policy that allows people like my grandparents to come here for a better life to have a chance. That's all. And so you call them, but they're singing a song that money has taken over, which it has, that everybody's not paying their fair share. Well, guess what? Everybody's not paying their fair share. There's people that pay no taxes whatsoever that are living in our society. There's people that are paying an exorbitant amount of taxes because they've done extremely well. But they're not paying enough now to carry those who don't pay anything. So I've come to the conclusion, should we be looking at a minimum base tax that everyone pays something? Just something. 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%. You can put in categories. If you're on welfare, you follow me? People say, well, if I'm on welfare, I shouldn't pay anything. Well, no, you should. You're still receiving. You're still giving something back. You belong to society. You're benefiting. Something has to go back to that. If you're in a stratosphere, you need to pay on that a fairness there where you can't just deduct everything and end up paying nothing. So
may I ask to the very point, because it's actually a question I have here in a second. To me, that will go down as President Trump's greatest failure. And I'm assuming that nothing's going to happen in the next 2.5 years on the tax code or the tax system or IRS. I really thought that when he was elected, especially the first time, that he would take on the tax code, the unfairness, the deductions, the fact that a huge percentage of Americans don't pay any taxes at all. I think everybody should pay taxes, even if it's $5. You got to
I,
have an
I agree.
investment in the
I
system.
agree 1,000%.
Please critique my critique of President Trump. Is reforming the tax code, whether it's flat tax or whatever, is that just simply beyond our reasonable capability for any president?
I think that what we're seeing now, and I worked with him pretty close for the first 2 years of his administration, 2017, 2018. It's gotten to the point, it's all about dollars and money. He's more obsessed with his own wealth and helping those with wealth and catering to people with wealth, expecting more, giving more, boom, boom, boom. You give me donations and contributions, I'll give you, this is my, I don't know what to tell you. I've never seen anything like it. And it scares me that basically the emolument clause, when I became politics, I never thought that I should be making money off of what I knew and the knowledge I had, the entree to pertinent information that others didn't have way before they did. But they're doing now. They're allowing betting, like sports betting, become political betting now. All this is wrong, and everything he's doing is based on that. You haven't heard anybody talk about the debt of the nation. We've amassed more debt in a quicker period of time under him right now than ever before. Both sides are bad. And then the big thing that we missed, the Bull Simpson,
Yeah,
we didn't do that,
that's right.
accept that, and that was Obama. Obama didn't want it to happen. So there's going to be some structural changes in our social programs and things we were doing. We should be targeting those who need help. And I'll give you perfect examples. I got chastised for childcare. Only thing I asked the Democratic caucus was, don't you think a person in need, and I said, you guys are going for $200,000, $400,000. Let's figure out how much we can afford. And then pick the class of people that need it the most. And I think you're going to find single females trying to make it, support a child. And that's going to be probably in the neighborhood of the $25,000, $30,000 income to $75,000. They need that help. So why can't we target that? And then on top of that, they got so upset with me saying, well, you're just being too hard, Joe. We've got to help everybody. I says, let me ask you something. If a person is not working, they're on total disability or they're on welfare and they're not going to work, should we be sending them a check for child care since they're home with their children? Does that make sense to you? I can't explain that. I can't explain a person. Now, God forbid, maybe they can't work, but they're getting assistance. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
Why are we sending more checks? And that's when I said, oh, enough's enough. So when they started coming on things like that, they wanted to there was no end to what support the government should be. And I grew up from day one. Government is not your provider. And this beautiful system of democracy, representative form of government that we have, a capitalist society, the government should be your partner, not your provider, period. But have the compassion to take care of those that can't take care of themselves, whether mentally or physically. That's it.
You're listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our very special guest, Joe Manchin, former senator from West Virginia, former governor of West Virginia. I guess we should throw in Secretary of State.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let's do the whole thing then.
We got some council race.
I was House of Delegate member in my state government. I was a state senator for 10 years. I ran for governor, got defeated the first time. I got back in and ran for Secretary of State and then became governor. And I was on my second term. I was 2 years into my second term when Senator Byrd died, and I ran for the Senate.
He is also an author. His book is Dead Center, In Defense of Common Sense. Is there a particular Hoosier leader and or legend you admire most?
Well, I kind of grew up watching Bobby Knight throw chairs.
We all did, yeah.
And then when I was a pilot, I flew him somewhere one time. He came done speaking engagement, and I had a little plane. I got a chance to spend a little time with him. I really enjoyed him. He was something, but he was I'm just signing up. From that, Evan Bayh is a dear friend of mine. Good man. So Joe Donnelly was a good friend of mine. Mike Braun. I like Mike. Mike and I got along great. Now, who I've really gotten close to is Greg Pence.
I did some work for him, some PR work. He's fabulous. His wife is fabulous.
Oh my
His
God.
daughter Nicole is
Denise?
fabulous. They're all fabulous.
They're unbelievable.
He's a a very, very nice gentleman. I was in the Army and he was in the Marine Corps, so it kind of surprised me how intelligent he was. But, what can you do?
Well,
Greg Pence is a good man.
he'll enjoy that kind of battering back and forth. But him and Denise are become very dear friends of ours, and we just got very close.
Well, Denise is my girlfriend's fashionista. She pays attention to what Denise wears, and it's really, really fun.
Well, we've had a couple trips with them, and we're just delightful. We just consider them. We call them from time to time. They call us. We're trying to get together. We go on a little bit. We take the boat I'm on right now.
Mhm.
A little couple 3 or 4 day cruise every now and then, and we always want them with us.
You mentioned, I'm going to mention another Hoosier who's been on the podcast a couple of times. Is it true that Mitch Daniels said you wouldn't fit in the Lincoln bedroom? True or false?
True. That booger there. Let me tell you one thing. He and I mean, Mitch is a dear friend, dear friend, Mitch Daniels. So first, when I met Mitch, as governors, we all have different conferences. We have the Governors Association, National Governors Association, and we meet a couple of times a year. Then the Afghan war was going on, and we were going over. They would take governors because we had all of our National Guard troops over there, and we got to go visit National Guard. So they put 4 of us together. They have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans go at a time. Just by random, I had Jeb Bush, Mitch Daniels, and Tom Vilsack, the 4 of us. And I guess in case the plane gets blown up, they want to make sure that 4 die equally. So anyway, we go over, we just hit it off. All of us did. We just hit it off from the first minute we got together and spent that kind of time. So we come back after this trip. And Jeb says, my brother wants us to come to the White House and we'll have breakfast the next morning and talk to his entourage. So I said, that's great. I've never been in the White House, or especially didn't stay in the White House. So I said, I love that. They put me and Tom Vilsack on the top floor where the workout room was up there. And, way up in the attic, okay, of the White House. So the next morning, we didn't get in about 2 o'clock, but the next morning I got up early and go down to breakfast. And Condoleezza Rice was there, Vice President Dick Cheney was there, Rumsfeld, George W. was there. He had 4 or 5 of them. But anyway, when I was coming down, I saw Mitch on the second floor. I said, tell me something. Did you sleep in the Lincoln bedroom? He said, Joe, I swear to God, you can't fit.
Lincoln was 6'5", 6'4".
I said, you little Sam. I said, how'd you get that? He laughed like how he rubbed that in. He said, you couldn't fit there. You couldn't.
Well, I guess it makes sense that W put the Democrats up top because he's not going to put his brother or his former budget director up top.
I thought we were going to treat equal. It could have been one of each. They could have put somebody up top. Jeb could have sacrificed. I knew Mitch wasn't sacrificing. We had so much fun that trip, and we've been close ever since, all of us.
My son did 2 tours as a combat infantryman in Afghanistan.
Oh, boy.
And maybe you saw him. I don't know for sure, but maybe.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I had so much respect for him. I'll tell you another one about Mitch. Mitch got upset when he found out. And during the day when we were over there, we would all go where our troops were. Mm-hmm. Well, I had troops. Some of my troops were in with the drones at that time. And they were just putting Hellfire missiles on the drones. And then also we had a helicopter squadron over there. So when I went to visit my troops, they said, you want to take a little helicopter tour and kind of show you how we do our bomb or shoot.
Sure.
I says, absolutely, I want to do that. And I says, I want to sit and I want to shoot that 50 caliber machine gun out that window. I want to see what it's like. And they laughed. They said, oh, well, we can't. I said, yeah, you can. I got clearance. You can do that for me. I says, I want to sit. So I got to do that and everything. So I'm up flying and everything. And they had an old red truck out there and everything. And they show you how they go up and they dive down on it. And that's difficult. I'm shooting everything. I'm going there. I unloaded the whole, whatever they had in that case, I unloaded it all. So I come back that night and we were having dinner together, all of us. And I told what I got to do. And not Jeb, but they were all making fun and saying this and that. How'd you do that? How'd you do that? I said, just talked my way into it. So Mitch, the next morning, was reading paper, the Afghanistan paper, like he was reading in the Afghanistan news. There's a bulletin right here that we have 2 camel herders are complaining and want reimbursement for 6 camels that got shot yesterday by a erratic machine gun approach from the United States helicopter. He was reading it to me. I said, "What?" He says, "That crazy pass you did when you were shooting everything, you must have killed 4 or 5 or 6 camels." Well, I knew I didn't kill any camels, but he was reading it so seriously, trying to rub it into me. He never let me forget that one.
But you still have one up on him.
I've got one up on him. Yeah. The other thing, we were standing in line, and they were showing us a new Afghan how the United States troops were training all these Afghan guards to guard their elected officials and everything. Their elite guard, and they all have machine guns. They were all standing there and everything. And there was one guy standing there with a machine gun, kept mouthing off. And I'm thinking, something's wrong. This could go bad in a hurry. So there were 4 of us. And what we figured out, that he knew that one of us was President George W. Bush's brother. So he kept getting more hostile, talking, and more animated. And the 3 of us start walking backwards. And here's Jeb by himself up there. And we got, whoa, we're back here. And Jeb, what the hell's going on, guys? He's not our brother. He's not.
Jeb's a big target anyway.
Yeah,
Governor Bush is. Stay with Indiana, because there's something happening in Indiana, and I'll do some disclosures here in a second.
Yeah.
The Secretary of State is on the ballot for Indiana in 2026. It's the off year. It's actually the off year because there's no federal Senate race. One of the people running for Secretary of State is Bo Bai, whom you obviously know, given your connection, your friendship with.
I knew Bo. He was a little Bo.
Yeah. Then the Republicans nominated someone named Max Engling at a convention who's had some pretty significant Washington, D.C. experience. However, there's a third candidate, an independent candidate in the Secretary of State's race. His name is Greg Ballard. He used to be the Republican mayor of Indianapolis. I worked for him for 2 years and remain very close to him and am helping on his campaign as he requests. But the independent, he's running under the Lincoln Party banner, but that doesn't become, it's one of those things in election law. He's not actually, the party doesn't exist until something happens in November. So putting that aside, he's the independent candidate for Secretary of State. He had to collect almost 40,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot, based the way the law is written here. He had to pay an outside company hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. He was a very, very popular here in Indianapolis Republican governor. Republican mayor. There's not going to be another Republican mayor probably in our lifetime here in this city. His campaign is making people upset. Is that just something? I have a few questions about this. Is that something that an independent party standard bearer or independent party proponent is just going to have to deal with? That is the acrimony of the entrenched politicians who represent the system.
You have to give him credit for having the tenacity and the ability to do what he did to get on the ballot. Okay. But an independent, to be a Democrat or Republican, all you have to do is pay a filing fee in most any state. And it's based off the income of whatever the salary is of that job. That's how most states do it. You take a percentage of that and you pay a filing fee. Because independent, they throw obstacles, thousands and thousands of signatures, hundreds of thousands of dollars to organize this. They make it so difficult. Now, how did the parties get that kind of power? So what we're pursuing and pushing is that primaries should be open. Everyone should be able to acquire ballot access the same as the 2 major parties. If you want a democracy, if you want a representative form of government, give me a chance to vote. Give me a chance to have somebody on the ballot that might represent my own thought process or my position, ideology-wise. And they're not doing that. So how can that happen? Let me give you this fact. 16 states have close primaries. That means if you're a registered independent, you cannot vote in the primary. That's about 90 million people in those 16 states that are registered. as independents. And quite a few states, there are more independents registered as no party affiliate than there are Democrats and Republicans. It's absolutely so wrong. So I'm disenfranchised. I thought the Voting Rights Act of 1965 gave all people, men and women eligible to vote, the right to vote, no matter what political party, race, color, whatever, anything shouldn't matter. You have a right to participate and vote. Well, how can I get disenfranchised by a system that I'm paying taxes and my taxes are supporting these elections and I can't participate? I think there's legal action that needs to be taken. And even though states' rights, the 10th Amendment, gives states' rights and states are responsible, then we're going to have class action suits to where we can bring states accountable to open your primaries up. You cannot deny anybody the right to vote.
Should also mention that Greg Ballard is a 23-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, an officer, served in the Persian Gulf War, and he's being treated as though he is a traitor to the Republican Party because of his dissatisfaction as to where the party is now. You detail some of this in your book. I meant to ask you, what's it like to be cursed at by a sitting United States president? You can answer that as well.
Yeah.
But when you decide to go this route, Republican or Democrat, there's an opportunity cost. How do you decide personally how much of that cost is enough?
I just thought the calling was greater than all the obstacles they put before me. I just never looked at it that way, but I never looked at the job being so valuable. I would discard my principles and what I believed. And again, back what I thought I owed an explanation to the people that believed in me or that I represented. And I've said this, when I first got there one time, and after I watched about a year or so of voting and crazy stuff that was going on, I asked Pat Leahy, who I really liked, a good man from Vermont. I said, Pat, is there a special club or something I don't know about? And he laughed. This is what you did right there. He laughed. He said, Joe, why would you ask that question? I said, there's got to be something you're afraid of losing to vote like this. This is crazy stuff. He says, you'll figure it out. I figured it out. The strength of the party, the pull of the party, the control of the party was greater. And I kept thinking, I've told people before, this is not the greatest job in the world. It might be the worst job I've ever had as far as character. Think about this. You go to work every day in the U.S. Senate or U.S. Congress, and you're expected to work every day of trying to get your friend defeated if they're on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay. I told Harry Reid one time, Harry Reid said one day to me, he said, we're going to have a party line vote. Now, mind you, I'd been involved in politics for quite a while. I've been Secretary of State, Governor, State Senator, House of Delegates. So I never heard that word party line. That means just because you belonged to a party and had a party identification, you had to vote that way. So I said, what does that mean? He said, well, all the Democrats were going to vote for this. And I said, well, we are. Is there a rule? Did I miss something? Signed something I had to do? He laughed. He said, no. I said, let me check the bill out. So I read the bill. I went and tapped him on the shoulder. I said, Harry, I'm on the floor of the United States Senate. On my best day, I can't sell this crap in West Virginia. Oh, he got all huffy and puffy and he got mad at me. And I said, no, Harry. Whoa, Harry, you didn't hire me. You can't fire me. I don't work for you. I don't work for the president. This makes no sense. What you're thinking that this is what you want to do and all Democrats should vote for. I'm not going to vote for it. And I didn't. And they just, they shunned me and made it so difficult. And I said, guys, you can't make this any more miserable than just being here watching this, whatever you want to call it, this crap show that's going on and calling this democracy. You can't make it any more miserable than the place already is. If you could fire me, I wish you would do it. I'd go home in a heartbeat. I said many times, this place sucks. I think I said that before.
Like Rodney Dangerfield and Caddyshack?
Yeah. I just called me place this. And so they worked on everything they could to make it very difficult for my committee assignments and things of that sort. I said, guys, listen, you think you can put pressure on me? You think you're going to make me submit to what the crazy stuff that you all want to do or that I should hate the other side? I said, where I come from, you try to get me fired every day from my job, you're not going to have a conversation. It's not going to be friendly. I can just tell you that. And that's just the way it is. So forget about that. And after about 3 months, they said, well, can you at least tell us how you're going to vote? I said, not only will I tell you how I'm going to vote, I'll tell you why I'm going to vote that way. So then about another month. Can you just vote last?
Yeah, I'm aware of those scenarios.
I
Yeah,
said,
make sure we got this before you vote.
yeah, can you just vote last? I said, do you think anyone's going to follow me? You guys got everybody wrapped up. I said, yeah. I said, but no, I'll vote when I want to vote. I said, I'm not voting last. I said, I'll vote when I need to vote. I'll do it. But I saw that. And I just said, this is not the best job. This is not by far. It's the worst political job I ever had. But the atmosphere I had to work in. So that's got to change. And where you're independent, your friend, Mr. Ballard, being an independent, I would commend him for just taking that stance. And he went through what he went through. And I know Bo and I know all those. So, a situation like that, you got good people with good character. Hopefully you're going to have a good Secretary of State person.
We've reached the point on the Leaders and Legends podcast where we ask the same 5 questions of all of our guests. Senator Manchin, are you ready?
I'm ready.
What was your first job?
Grocery store, my grandfather. Stocking shelves.
What was your first concert?
Rod Stewart probably would be my first.
If you could suggest any book for someone to read, which book would you recommend?
Churchill's Follies.
If you could witness any event in history, be there in person as it happens, which event would you choose?
Oh boy, in history, I would have to think that being in the room when Harry Truman made the decision to drop the atomic bomb, knowing the devastation, knowing how he had to weigh that, knowing how heavy that was in the annals of humanity. But he had, that would have been something to watch the process. And next of all would have been the Cuban Missile Crisis. John Kennedy.
If you could have dinner with anyone living today, 2 hours off the record just to chat, whom would you choose?
I've had dinner with an awful lot of people that I would have liked to have had dinner with and didn't think I'd ever have the opportunity. And I did. So who's left in the world, in the world you're saying? Or
yes, sir. Living today.
Living today in the world. I had to think about that one because I'm a political figure.
It doesn't have to be. It could be Paul McCartney. It could be.
You know who I really enjoy? It's
Who?
President Macron from France.
President Macron from France?
He and I got to know each other. We spent some time, but just sit down for 2 hours and be able to talk. We became acquainted, and he was very upset with me when I did the Inflation Reduction Act because it was taking so much investments out of the state and country. And we talked about different things, and then we became friends. So I think sitting down and having a more in-depth conversation would have been great on that line.
Let me ask you one last question. I've never asked anybody on this podcast. 375 interviews. You're the first. Is Italian Catholic guilt real?
Oh, is it ever?
You have been listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, an Indiana-based public relations enterprise. We are also a federally certified veteran-owned small business registered with the state of Indiana and the city of Indianapolis. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister. Our guest today, Joe Manchin, author of Dead Center, In Defense of Common Sense. So very kind of you to give us an hour of your time. We'd love to have you back on maybe after November, after the election results to see. And we'll follow up about having your daughter Heather on the podcast. You need to have
her because she's the driving force that made me believe that this is an enterprise. It's a duopoly. Democrats and Republican corporations. It's not about public policy. It's about the strength and the power of using the political system.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for listening to Leaders and Legends, brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated. If you want to contact us about this program or our menu of public relations services, please send us an email at robert@veteranstrategies.com. That's robert@veteranstrategies.com.